What's up, Fantasy Pros? I am Andrew Erickson. I'm thrilled to be your guide as you gear up for the 2024 NFL Draft. Because the Fantasy Pros, there is no offseason. So today, we're going to break down every team's needs, all 32 teams, and what they need to do in the NFL Draft regarding their current rosters. But before we dive headfirst into each franchise's draft boards, if you want a chance to win a premium one-year subscription to Fantasy Pros, all you have to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, comment on this video, and that is it. I'm announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Now, let's see what's next for all 32 NFL teams as we go division by division, analyzing the draft needs for each team. Arizona Cardinals team needs wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, cornerback. The departure of Marquise Brown to the Chiefs has the Cardinals setting their sights on a wide receiver in this year's draft. Armed with 6 picks inside the top 90, the most of any team, Kyler Murray is poised for a fantasy football resurgence. The offensive line is another area of focus, specifically at guard. Cardinals need to shore up their guard positions. They drafted interior offensive lineman John Gaines in the 4th round last season. Tristan Colon was also re-signed to compete for a guard spot. Elijah Wilkinson is penciled in to start at guard after being re-signed, but he was horrible last year as the 82nd lowest graded guard per PFF. Turning to defense, Cardinals face an uphill battle across the board, with the defense ranked bottom in the 2023. The addition of pass rusher and bolstering the defensive line are top priorities. The Cardinals have already begun addressing these needs in free agency with Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols, but these are depth pieces, not needle movers. Perimeter quarterback highlights their other primary need. Second-year man Garrett Williams is locked into starting slot role, but the boundary cornerbacks are total unknowns with Antonio Hamilton a free agent. On the roster currently are cornerbacks Ketrell Clark, Tavon Wilson, and Sterling Thomas. Woof. At least they have Sean Murphy Bunting now, but he has been traditionally more of a slot cornerback. He played outside last season for the Titans, so it's plausible Arizona will also start him on the boundary. With a flurry of picks inside the top rounds, Arizona will surely take a cornerback who could play on the perimeter. Nothing in free agency changes that outlook. Seattle Seahawks team needs defensive line, offensive line. Seahawks pass rush and defensive line are under the microscope. Last season's performance left much to be desired, with rookie edge rusher Derek Hall facing particular struggles. Their run defense was also a major liability. With Leonard Williams back on a 3-year deal, but Mario Edwards and Duran Reed's futures uncertain after 2024, boosting the defensive line is a priority. Former Wolverine Mike Morris missed most of his rookie year due to an injury, but his hopeful return under Mike McDonald's guidance. On the offensive line, the Seahawks battled a barrage of injuries last year, leading to a compromised offensive unit. With last year's entire starting interior offensive line hitting free agency and key players like Damian Lewis departing, Seattle's been active in securing interior depth, like center Nick Harris to fortify the line, along with the addition of George Fant to address the right tackle position. The Seahawks need Abraham Lucas to get healthy at right tackle. Without Lucas last season, the Seahawks had no answers at right tackle. Los Angeles Rams team needs cornerback, defensive line, safety. The Rams secondary, despite its 21st ranking in pass defense DVOA, demonstrated impressive resilience last year as a total unknown unit, but still they ranked 32nd in PFF coverage grade. Therefore, the Rams are expected to invest heavily in defensive backs, continuing their trend of prioritizing this group in early draft rounds. The return of cornerback Darius Williams makes a critical step, but with Ahkello Witherspoon and starting safeties from last year on the move, bolstering the secondary unit is a top priority. Bringing in safety Cameron Crowe for the Commanders fills one of these safety spots. The defensive line faces a new era without the legendary Aaron Donald. While his absence leaves big shoes to fill, players like Bobby Brown, Kobe Turner, and Byron Young have stepped up, showing promise for the future. The re-signing of Michael Holt also adds depth as the Rams look to maintain their defensive prowess. On the offensive front, the Rams have already taken significant steps to shore up their line. The departure of Coleman Shelton and the release of Brian Allen called for decisive action, which the Rams answered by re-signing Kevin Dotson and welcoming Jonah Jackson to the fold. These moves underline the Rams' commitment to a formidable offensive line, critical for both their run blocking and pass protection schemes. San Francisco 49ers team needs cornerback, defensive line, offensive line, and wide receiver. The 49ers defensive line could look very new with potential departures of key players like Randy Gregory and the recent signings of Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos. With Eric Armstead's recent move to the Jaguars, the 49ers tradition of bolstering their front might continue, addressing voids with high-caliber talent throughout the NFL draft. On the offensive line, addressing the right guard position emerges as a critical need. Jake Brendel and Spencer Burford were well below league average at center and right guard last season. The re-signing of John Feliciano as the starting center is a step in the right direction, but drafting fresh talent to solidify protection and the run support is paramount. The secondary remains a glaring need, having been a weak spot for the 49ers over the last 2 seasons. With the addition of Isaac Yiadom and the departure of several key players at the end of the 2024 season, San Francisco is expected to focus on bolstering this unit throughout the draft, ensuring a balanced and formidable defense. Offensively, the wide receiver spot could also see some changes especially with rumors surrounding Brandon Ayuk as a trade candidate. Los Angeles Chargers team needs wide receiver, running back, offensive line, defensive line, and cornerback. On to the AFC West, where we welcome to a new chapter for the LA Chargers under the helm of Jim Harbaugh, with significant contract restructurings for stars like Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and notable departures in the wide receiver room between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. The Chargers are painting a fresh future. The backfield seems like a prime opportunity for new faces, as both Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly are gone, making room for Gus Edwards under the guidance of Greg Roman, the new offensive coordinator. Josh Palmer is entering the last year of his contract, so replenishing the wide receiver unit will be crucial. Quentin Johnston is not the answer. The offensive line, criticized for its poor run blocking last season, is ripe for an upgrade, particularly with Corey Linsley pondering retirement. Trey Pipkins struggles. Signing Bradley Bozeman was a savvy free agent move, as he was very successful with the Ravens under Greg Roman. Defensively, the edge rusher position may see a youthful infusion, yet the interior defensive line and the secondary scream for attention. Asante Samuel Jr. is a linchpin piece, but everybody else needs to go. This team could not trot out Deion Leonard as a starter in 2024 as a former 2022 7th round draft pick. Denver Broncos team needs quarterback, receiver, offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, and safety. Broncos are embarking on a transformative journey with Sean Payton at the helm, eyeing a new chapter post Russell Wilson. With the 12th overall pick and a draft filled with first-round quarterback talent, a rookie quarterback is a no-brainer. Bo Nix, you are a future Denver Bronco. Still, the ideal scenario, trade back, accumulate picks, and still snag a promising signal caller. They don't have any second-round picks, but let's not bury the lead here. They need a quarterback, as Jarrett Stidham is not the answer. On the receiving front, the departure of Jerry Jeudy marks a significant shift, leaving the Broncos to reassess their wideout room. The O-line also faces uncertainty, with key figures like Garrett Bowles and Cam Fleming's futures up in the air, spotlighting the need for fresh talent and stability up front. The Broncos may also have to get a new center, with Lloyd Cushenberry leaving in free agency. Defensively, the Broncos grapple with gaps across the board, bolstering the linebacker room to addressing the secondary struggles outside of Patrick Surtain in the second. Denver's defense seeks rejuvenation. They're losing two starting cornerbacks to free agency, and Demario Mathis is horrible, second worst coverage grade per PFF in 2023. Riley Moss was their third rounder last year, whom they traded up for, and he had a delayed rookie campaign due to a core muscle injury. It's very possible that Denver skips cornerback in the draft and hopes Moss can develop in year two with a healthy offseason. That would keep Jaquan McMillan slotted inside, with Moss and Surtain operating on the perimeter. The release of safety Justin Simmons further underscores the need for strategic additions in the safety department. On the D-line, Denver needs more pass rush after finishing with the fourth worst pressure rate in 2023. Their defense was also atrocious against the run. Las Vegas Raiders team needs quarterback, offensive line, and cornerback. Quarterback room sees a new contender as Gardner Minshew steps in, signaling an open competition for the starting role with two-year quarterback Aiden O'Connell. However, the answer could not be either of them. Meanwhile, the departure of Josh Jacobs leaves big shoes to fill, with Zamir White poised to take on the lead, supported by versatile Amir Abdullah and the new addition of Alexander Madison. The offensive line, especially on the right side, faces some uncertainty. With the re-signing of Andre James and the potential shift of Thayer Munford, the Raiders are on the hunt to solidify their offensive front. DJ Fluker is penciled in as a starting right guard. The guy's not played an NFL game in the last 2 years. Ergo, they have a massive hole at guard. Ben Brown is the other option, but he has 8 snaps played in the last 2 seasons. Woof. On defense, the secondary remains an area of concern, with rookie struggles and free agency departures highlighting the need for reinforcements. Cornerback Jacorian Bennett struggled in year 1. They lock Amika Robinson as a cornerback starter in free agency who signed with the Lions. As the draft approaches, the Raiders focus on cornerbacks, interior offensive linemen, and the potential at quarterback illustrate their targeted approach to building a competitive roster in the AFC West. Last but not least, Kansas City Chiefs team needs receiver, offensive line, running back, defensive line, and cornerback. With Rashee Rice solidifying his role as a wide receiver, the Chiefs are in the market for a rookie receiver who could bring speed and reliability. Names like Oregon's Troy Franklin, Texas' Xavier Worthy emerge as tantalizing prospects to stretch the field for Patrick Mahomes. The offensive line and running back positions are also under scrutiny. With the departures of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon, and Donovan Smith, the Chiefs might seek reinforcements both up front and in the backfield to get back to their offensive juggernaut status. They drafted Wayne Morris in the 3rd round last year, but he already showed out as a rookie. Still, he could theoretically slide in a starting left tackle in 2024 and beyond. Lucas Niang is another option in-house at tackle, but he's in the final year of his deal as well. Same for starting center Creed Humphrey. Defensively, the Chiefs faces the need for upgrades across the Lions secondary. Despite Chris Jones' massive re-signing, the potential trade of L'Jarius Sneed and the search for pass rush prowess highlight the Chiefs' defensive recalibration efforts. They drafted Felix Ndubuike Uzama last year in the 1st round. Derek Nada needs to be upgraded from badly at defensive tackle. He's one of PFF's lowest grade defenders the last 2 seasons, but like last season, he is back on another cheap deal. Charles Omenihu was 4th in pressures generated last year for the Chiefs, but he will be a free agent in 2025. Heading to the NFC North, Chicago Bears team needs quarterback, defensive line, offensive line, and cornerback. So obviously the needs start at quarterback. They're going to take Caleb Williams first overall, dropping him into an ideal situation with wide receivers DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, basically doing the opposite of what they did with Justin Fields, learning from their mistakes. On defense, the Bears finished with the second fewest sacks and PFF's 32nd ranked pass rush grade in 2023. Pass rush is what they need defensively after they draft their new franchise quarterback. More so on defense, it's focusing on their secondary because the Bears' run defense was elite down the stretch under Matt Eberflus. Offense to the offensive line, it's a little bit tricky. The Bears were a bottom 10 blocking unit across most metrics, with Lucas Patrick at center being the worst of the bunch. He's a free agent, and the Bears would be wise to move and upgrade at center. They signed guard Coleman Shelton to be their new center. He was PFF's 12th highest graded run blocker last season among centers. He's a big upgrade from Patrick. The rest of the offensive line is returning, with only left guard Tevin Jenkins entering a contract year. Chicago should be okay at offensive tackle between Braxton Jones, the Bears' best pass blocker in 2023, and Darnell Wright entering his second season. If they upgrade offensive line in the draft, my best estimates will be across the interior for starters and then address tackle for additional depth. Detroit Lions. Team needs defensive line, wide receiver, cornerback, and offensive line. The Lions' Achilles heel on defense showed up at the worst time in 2023, with their secondary getting shredded by opposing offenses, but the team re-signed Emmanuel Mosley to a one-year deal. They traded for Carlton Davis from Tampa Bay, signed Amik Robertson as another cornerback starter in free agency. They revamped their secondary in free agency, making it less likely they draft a cornerback. I think the need is stronger on the defensive line. They bolstered the run defense, though, with the massive addition of DJ Reader, but Aiden Hutchinson still needs a stronger edge rusher across from him on that defensive front. Offensively, the Lions look like surefire bets to add another wide receiver. Josh Reynolds is a free agent. I don't think the Lions can risk going all in on Jameson Williams entering his third season. Detroit also may need to overhaul the interior offensive line, with Jonah Jackson now with the Rams. Dan Skipper is another interior offensive line depth piece they were able to bring back on a one-year deal. They have in-house options between Skipper and Kato Owasika that can plug into the left guard spot vacated by Jackson. Owasika, a former Eagles offensive line piece, could be a diamond in the rough. Still, both of their starting tackles are also due for new contracts at the end of the 2024 season. Minnesota Vikings team needs quarterback, cornerback, defensive line, offensive line, and wide receiver. Armed with 2 first-round picks after a trade with the Texans, the writing is on the wall that the Vikings want and need a quarterback in this year's draft after they failed to re-sign Kirk Cousins in free agency. Sam Darnold probably isn't the answer. On defense, the Vikings generated PFF's second worst pass rush grade, despite blitzing at the highest rate in the NFL. Simply put, Brian Flores' scheme is trying to make up for the lack of sheer talent across the barren defensive line. They need to address the glaring issue by investing in a premier pass rusher. Minnesota made some splashy moves, though, during free agency, signing defensive lineman Jonathan Greenard, who signed a 4-year, $76 million contract with Minnesota. They also signed Andrew Van Ginkel from the Dolphins. At cornerback, Byron Murphy is entering the last year of his contract. They drafted 2 cornerbacks last season, with Mekhi Blackman playing well enough to be a feasible piece in 2024. Still, Andrew Booth Jr. has barely played over the last 2 seasons. Caleb Evans should not be viewed as a legitimate starter after finishing as the team's worst cornerback in 2023. The Vikings really could use an improved slot cornerback or safety, considering both Murphy and John Metellus were bad defending the inside in 2023. Next up, Green Bay Packers team needs just offensive line and cornerback. So I'm envisioning the Packers either going with the interior offensive line or cornerback with decent draft capital this year. Green Bay has drafted a center/interior offensive lineman in 4 of their last 5 drafts, 2 of which have been selected inside the top 65. So after foregoing interior offensive line in 2023, look for the Pack to add more big bodies to bolster the inside of their offensive line, especially given their surplus of selections on day 2 of the NFL draft. John Runyon was the only offensive lineman projected to start who is no longer on the team. They do have Sean Ryan as an in-house potential plug-in option, although he struggled in action as the team's starting right guard last year. Center Josh Myers is in the final year of his contract. Any offensive pieces selected in the draft should be centered around the Packers' offensive line, with a strong nucleus of running backs and tight ends and wide receivers for Jordan Love. On defense, cornerback is the big issue, given that all the ones that played last year besides Jair Alexander weren't very good or were injured. Eric Stokes is going on the final year of his rookie deal after missing most of the 2023 season with injuries. Keyshawn Nixon was last year's starting slot cornerback, re-signed for a 3-year deal. Corey Ballantyne will also return on a 1-year deal. The 2 defensive backs they drafted last season in round 7, Carrington Valentine and Anthony Johnson Jr., shockingly didn't pan out. It's simple for the Packers. Offensive line and cornerback are the top needs. Baltimore Ravens, team needs offensive line, wide receiver, defensive line, and cornerback. To the AFC North we go, with the Ravens in dire need of offensive line help to get back to the AFC Championship game. They've already lost John Simpson, Kevin Zeitler, and Morgan Moses. Left tackle Ronnie Stanley is under contract for 2 more seasons, but has gone through ups and downs since his injuries started piling up. The Ravens see an opportunity to upgrade from Stanley. Don't think they won't pull the trigger to do so. The front office is not happy they're paying him like a top 5 left tackle. Remember that the Ravens will also enjoy the fruits of drafting offensive guard Andrew Vorhees after an essential redshirt rookie season, after the former USC product tore his ACL at the 2023 NFL Combine. A wide receiver also makes sense for Baltimore, given the lack of depth behind Zay Flowers, with Odell Beckham Jr. released. Same goes for defensive line edge. Even with Justin Matabuke returning, third-year edge linebacker David Ojabo needs to step up after being limited to just 6 games the last 2 seasons. He's another uber-talented player who's been plagued by injuries. Another issue that they should address is cornerback across from Marlon Humphrey. That would make some sense. Brandon Stevens is entering a contract year, while the Ravens have several other cornerbacks on expired deals. Pittsburgh Steelers, team needs offensive line, wide receiver, defensive line, cornerback, and tight end. Steelers' top priorities in the draft will likely come down between offensive line and wide receiver. Incumbent left tackle starter Dan Moore is a 2025 free agent. Is coming off a season as PFF's 6th lowest graded tackle. They can and should upgrade at left tackle. And even though the majority of their offensive line starters will return from last season, they can upgrade everywhere. Interior offensive line, offensive tackle are both major needs after the Steelers posted the 2nd worst pass blocking grade in 2023 per PFF. Keep in mind, they upgraded the offensive line last offseason. The need for cornerback is lessened in favor of wide receiver, given the trade with the Panthers for cornerback Dante Jackson. The wide receiver need increases obviously with Deontay Johnson now on the Carolina Panthers. Tight end depth is also a need for the Steelers. Pat Freiermuth is in the last year of his contract, and there's not much wide receiver depth behind George Pickens. They already released Allen Robinson. Calvin Austin III has not shown much after being drafted in 2022. They signed Van Jefferson, but he's just a guy at best. Interior defensive line also needs some love. Cam Hayward isn't getting any younger, entering the last year of his deal. Armon Watts signed with the Patriots. They re-signed Martravius Adams to a 2-year deal. Keanu Benton was a hit last year, but it's not enough. Another interior defensive line piece makes sense in the draft. Cincinnati Bengals, team needs offensive tackle, wide receiver, and defensive line. The Bengals lost right tackle Jonah Williams in free agency to the Cardinals, setting the stage for Cincy to draft his replacement in the 2024 NFL Draft. T. Higgins has been hit with the franchise tag, but Tyler Boyd is likely on his way out. The Bengals drafted 2 wide receivers last season, so they prepare for the wide receiver room to look different. Still, if they don't believe in either Andre Alcevis or Charlie Jones stepping into a full-time role, they will likely add another wide receiver, probably by ways of the NFL Draft. Given the cost versus wide receivers in free agency, they also brought back veteran Trenton Irwin. On defense, they need to add more depth on the interior defensive line. After DJ Reader went down last year, the Bengals defense crumbled. BJ Hill is their next best interior defender, and he will be a free agent in 2025. They signed defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins to a 2-year deal as Reader left free agency for the Lions. Trey Hendrickson will also be a free agent in 2025 after generating 20 sacks in 2023. At cornerback, Chidobe Azubue left in free agency for the Titans, putting Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner into a projected starting roles. Taylor-Britt proved in his 2nd season, generating a 67.6 passer rating when targeted. Turner struggled at times as a rookie. That's par for the course with a first-year cornerback. Don't expect the Bengals to do anything too crazy with secondary pieces. Cleveland Browns, team needs offensive line, wide receiver, defensive line, running back. Browns don't have a first-round pick or favorable salary cap situation thanks to Deshaun Watson. The offensive line was decimated by injuries in 2024, so there's a need for additional depth. Jarrett Wills is in the final year of his rookie deal, while his left tackle backup, Jerron Christian, is a 2024 free agent. But the fact that they hit on DeJuan Jones in last year's draft, the highest graded rookie pass blocker, makes offensive tackle less of a priority. The team also drafted Luke Whippler as a guard in the 6th round of last year's draft. Nick Chubb is coming off a season-ending knee injury and will be a free agent in 2025. Very possible this is the final year as a Brown. The only other running back the Browns added in free agency was pass catcher Naeem Hines. He joins the backfield with Pierre Strong and Jerome Ford. On defense, defensive line and linebacker highlighted the major needs prior to free agency for the Browns. The Browns could have easily regressed on defense after a record-breaking year, given the sheer volume of key defensive contributors they could lose, and they did lose between Anthony Walker to the Dolphins and Sian Takitaki to the Patriots, although they did sign Devin Bush and Jordan Hicks as linebacker replacements. On the defensive line, Shelby Harris re-signed for 2 years, Zadarius Smith and Maurice Hurst are also back. The Browns did a great job retaining their defensive players in free agency to prevent taking a massive step backwards on the defensive side of the ball. It's a strong accomplishment given the lack of salary cap space. They also just have 2 picks in the first 4 rounds, making free agency a priority to improve the roster. Atlanta Falcons team needs cornerback and defensive line. The quarterback position taken care of courtesy of Kirk Cousins, Falcons can shift focus to defense. It's been 3 straight seasons that the Falcons have drafted a skill position player within the top 10 picks of the NFL draft. With defensive head coach Raheem Morris taking over, he and GM Terry Fontenot project to flip the script and look hard at the highest ranked defensive player on the draft board. Quarterbacks AJ Terrell and Mike Hughes will be free agents in 2025. With Jeff Okudah and Trey Flowers gone, cornerback is a main area that Atlanta may need to improve on, especially because the coverage unit ranked in the bottom 10 last season compared to the run-stuffing defense that ranks second in PFF run defensive grading. The offensive line is in good shape, but the defensive line desperately needs pass rush juice. Death, taxes, and the Falcons needing a player who can generate pressure. Calais Campbell, who is currently a free agent at 38 years old, led the team in sacks and pressures last season. With the 8th overall pick, it's going to come down to cornerback or edge for the Atlanta Falcons if they decide to go address the defense. Tampa Bay Buccaneers team needs cornerback, offensive line, wide receiver. The Buccaneers brought back Baker Mayfield in free agency, putting them outside the round 1 QB market. So instead of searching for a quarterback, anticipate Tampa to bolster their secondary that was gashed for the 4th most passing yards per game in 2023. Carlton Davis was playing in the last year of his contract before he was traded to the Lions for draft picks. They also signed quarterback Bryce Hall from the Jets and Devere Thomas from the Texans, but that might not be enough. On offense, the Buccaneers could not run block for a lick last season. They need to get better play from the interior of their offensive line. Last year's second rounder Cody Mock needs to play much better in year 2. Guard Aaron Stinney signed with the Giants, and his backup Matt Filer is still a free agent. Across the offensive line, the Bucs added offensive tackle Justin Skoll, right guard Isaiah Opata, and Ben Bredesen. Opeta was a former Eagle, so he's got some upside. Bredesen was a Giant, but he's a downgrade from Stinney. Scully was Tampa Bay's practice squad for the last 2 seasons. Offensive line desperately still needs work, especially at the interior level. Carolina Panthers team needs wide receiver, tight end, offensive tackle, defensive line, and cornerback. The Panthers sold the farm to acquire quarterback Bryce Young in last year's draft. They're now facing a massive uphill battle to compete. Young must have a massive turnaround in year 2, or Carolina will be back picking at the top of the draft in 2025. Offensively, they need to give him actual weapons at wide receiver and tight end, not the hodgepodge group they trotted out last season. DJ Chark is a free agent. They traded for Deontay Johnson to be their number 1. It's a solid start to upgrade Young's weapons this offseason, but they still have tight end Tommy Tremble as a starter. Holding the 33 overall pick, I wouldn't be shocked to see the Panthers invest another round 2 selection in wide receiver in a jam-packed class filled with wide receiver talent. Jonathan Mingo did nothing as a rookie to earn any benefit of the doubt. He can improve or be a dominant player in year 2. The offensive line was horrible in 2023 in both pass and run blocking. They added 2 starting guards in free agency, so offensive tackle will be the logical position to target in the draft. On defense, edge is the most logical position given the loss of edge rusher Brian Burns. He was traded to the Giants for a 2nd and 5th round pick. They drafted Oregon edge rusher DJ Johnson last season to underwhelming results. Like last season, I anticipate they draft athletes from the SEC that fit the team needs at edge and wide receiver first and foremost. New Orleans Saints. Team needs offensive line, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, defensive line, and cornerback. The Saints have had a bottom 10 PFF pass blocking grade in back-to-back seasons. Trevor Penning has been a colossal bust as a former 2021 first-round pick. Andres Pete is declining, and Cameron Irving is gone. James Hurst took a pay cut to stay with the Saints. New Orleans should get back to the basics with an offensive tackle at the top of the draft. Michael Thomas has been designated as a post-June 1st cut. Juwan Johnson is also in the last year of his deal. So although wide receiver tight end may not seem like an obvious need, they need to invest in these positions. In free agency, all they did was sign Cedric Wilson to a 2-year deal. New Orleans defense also posted a bottom 5 pressure rate in 2023. They need edge rush presence after hitting defensive tackle selections back-to-back of last year's draft. Brian Bresee was a non-factor in year 1, whereas Isaiah Foskey made a larger impact from the get-go. The biggest free agency splash came in the form of Chase Young, who signed a 1-year deal worth $13 million, but keep in mind that's only a 1-year deal. The cornerback position is in decent shape, but the injuries to Marshawn Lattimore have to be concerning. Isaiah Giddum signed with the 49ers after his best season to date with the Saints. Paulson Adebo is a strong young starter, but we'll see his contract expire at the end of the season. If anything, the Saints need a new nickelback to replace Alontae Taylor, as no quarterback allowed more catches or yards per game from the slot than the former 2022 second-round pick. To the AFC South, Indianapolis Colts. Team needs cornerback, defensive line, tight end, and wide receiver. The Colts' best quarterback last year, Kenny Moore, was re-signed for a 3-year deal, $30 million contract. Still, they need to shore up the remaining back end after selecting 2 cornerbacks later in the draft last season. Indianapolis has a track record, no pun intended, of selecting athletic players with ideal size and speed. I expect them to do that After cornerback on defense, it's pass rush efficiency that needs a major boost. Alongside rush defense on the defensive line, they have plenty of guys to stop the run that they addressed in free agency, but rushing the passer is a different story. DeForest Buckner and former first-round pick Kwity Paye are entering the final years of their contracts. They did bring back Tyquan Lewis, signed a 2-year deal worth $12 million. He was the team's second highest graded pass rusher last year, but they need more pass rush juice. They cannot rest on their sack numbers from last year, which they ranked 5th most in the NFL, as a reason to stay stagnant at pass rush, because they boasted the 11th lowest pressure rate in 2023. Offensively, they re-signed Michael Pittman Jr., so wide receiver is not as important in my estimation as tight end is for the Colts offense. Third-year tight end Jelani Woods can't be relied on after missing all of last year, and the Colts don't have another difference maker at the tight end position on the roster. That was so apparent last year when they would split tight end snaps between 3 and even 4 tight ends at a time. Mo Alley Cox can be cut for a zero dead cap hit with a potential out in his final year of his contract this season. Houston Texans team needs cornerback, offensive tackle, defensive line, wide receiver. Houston enters free agency with needs ranging from offensive tackle, defensive end, and cornerback, with so many impending free agents on the roster. Their needs have changed since the free agency wave first hit, and they signed a vast array of veterans during free agency. It puts them in a position to really just go best player available when they select for the first time in round 2 during the draft, after trading their first round pick to the Minnesota Vikings. Defensively, I still think they need to go more in cornerback than on the defensive line. They addressed both in free agency with names like Jeff Okudah, Daniel Hunter, Denico Autry, but the strength of this defense last year was up front as the second best run defense in DVOA. With the secondary, their much bigger weakness, I think acquiring another top-tier cornerback across from Derek Stingley would be ideal and makes the most sense for this Texans defense. I could also see them going with more offensive line depth after they got decimated by injuries last year. The offensive unit underwhelmed as a whole entirely. Titus Howard had a career-low PFF passing grade. Kenyon Green missed the entire season. So I wouldn't rule out any additional assets invested to protect franchise quarterback CJ Stroud, while maybe sprinkling in some wide receiver upgrades for their second-year quarterback. Jacksonville Jaguars team needs cornerback, offensive tackle, and wide receiver. The Jaguars are in an interesting position in the NFL draft with 17th overall pick because the odds are in their favor that they can get a solid cornerback or tackle option to solve their team's most obvious need after a disastrous second half of the 2023 season. Left tackles Cam Robinson and Walker Little will be free agents at the end of the year. Ezra Cleveland was signed to be a 3-year deal to be their stalwart and starting left guard. The signing ensures they have at least a starting offensive line in place before the draft takes place. They further bolster the offensive line with center Mitch Morse, inking him to a 2-year deal worth $10.5 million. Gives them more interior depth alongside Luke Faulkner as a backup. Interior offensive line is solid, but tackle is a little bit of a sore spot, especially when you look beyond just this season. A cornerback, Tyson Campbell and Ronald Darby are the projected 2 outside cornerbacks after they lost Darius Williams and Trey Herndon. Campbell will be a free agent at the end of the season. Now, wide receiver, Gabe Davis has replaced Calvin Ridley, but that's hardly an upgrade. So don't be surprised if Jacksonville drafts a wide receiver in a very talented wide receiver class. Tennessee Titans team needs offensive line, wide receiver, tight end, cornerback, and defensive line. The Titans have expressed faith that Will Levis can be their future franchise quarterback. They brought an offensive-minded head coach, Brian Callahan, to aid in the development of their second-year quarterback in the post-Mike Vrabel era. Offensive line is still an obvious area of need, even if they select an offensive lineman in the top 10 last season. They finished close to average in adjusted line yards. They currently rank 31st in offensive line spending. Blake Cushenberry signed with the Titans in free agency, likely as their new center. He makes up for the loss of Aaron Brewer. They also signed Sajid Charles at guard from the Commanders, but overall, they didn't do that much in free agency to improve the overall offensive personnel. They did much more at wide receiver with the big signing of Calvin Ridley to a 4-year, $92 million contract. I would not make the Ridley signing be a reason for them to not draft another receiver, given that DeAndre Hopkins, older age, is also playing in the final year of his contract. Tight end is also a big area of need, given the lack of production from Chigakonkwo in his second season. It's possible that Tennessee might not just value the tight end position, given the Bengals' lack of tight end usage and production under Callahan the last several seasons. Defensively, the Titans have drafted 0 defensive players in last year's draft, and that's going to hurt them in a big way in 2024, as they have a boatload of starters that need new deals across the edge, defensive line, defensive tackle, and cornerback positions. Last year's starting quarterbacks are both free agents. Chidobe Awuzie was signed in free agency for a 3-year deal. He knows Callahan from their days spent together in Cincinnati. But defensive line and cornerback should be in serious consideration in the draft, given the losses of Denico Autry and Sean Murphy-Bunting at cornerback. Dallas Cowboys team needs offensive tackle, interior offensive line, wide receiver, running back, and defensive tackle. The NFC East we go, starting with Big D. Their biggest hole is at offensive tackle. 33-year-old Tyron Smith signed with the Jets in free agency. Terrence Steele is penciled in as the other starting tackle, but he finished as a bottom 15 pass blocker in 2023. He led more quarterback hits than any other tackle. Last year's starting center, Tyler Biadasz, is now in Washington with the Commanders. Offensive lineman Zach Martin is a free agent at the end of the season, entering age 34, hence the need for offensive linemen. Wide receiver is also a area of need, given that there's virtually no reliable depth behind CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks entering the last year of his deal. Michael Gallup has already been released. Jalen Tolbert has shown nothing over the last 2 years in his NFL career. Martavis Bryant is not the answer. Plugging up the interior defensive line also needs to be at the forefront of Dallas's offseason plans in the draft. They were exposed at times versus the run in 2023, and two of their major interior disruptors are gone, between Jonathan Hankins and Neville Gallimore. Demarcus Lawrence was one of their top run defenders in addition to his pass rushing skill set, but he's also in the final year of his contract. Former first-round pick Mozzie Smith figures to take on a bigger role in year 2, but he struggled as a rookie, the 7th worst graded run defender per PFF. Running back is also a major hole after Tony Pollard signed with the Titans. Rico Dowdle was re-signed, but Dallas is the prime remaining landing spot for a current remaining running back free agent or for the 2024 rookie running back draft class. The big picture of the Dallas Cowboys is that they could not afford to spend big this offseason, given that Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, and Lamb are all ready for new contracts. As a result, they did not make much of any noise during the free agency period and why they have so many needs entering the NFL draft. Again, Dallas is another team that could regress majorly in 2024 based on the sheer volume of turnover on their personnel. Philadelphia Eagles. Team needs cornerback, offensive line, wide receiver, linebacker, and safety. The Eagles defense regressed in a major way in 2023, especially at the cornerback position, with their veteran starters playing way past their prime. They desperately need to rehaul their secondary entirely, especially at cornerback. Bradley Roby is going to be a free agent. Slot cornerback Avonte Maddox was already released. But this team loves to invest high-end draft picks into the offensive line more than any other position, and when in doubt, we know the Eagles draft guys from Georgia. Jason Kelce has retired on the offensive line, but the Eagles were way ahead of this when they drafted Cam Jurgens and Tyler Steen in back-to-back drafts. Landon Dickerson was also entering the last year of his contract, but the Eagles are too keen on letting their O-line pieces hit free agency. He signed a 4-year, $84 million extension. Still, they can't keep everyone. Sua Opeta and Jack Driscoll are both gone, testing the depth of the Eagles' offensive line. Lane Johnson also isn't getting younger at age 34. Even so, they're in a solid cap space situation, have a boatload of projected compensatory picks coming their way. When a quarterback, linebacker, offensive line depth headline a team's needs, the team is in good shape. The roster is in good shape for this Philadelphia Eagles team. It's definitely better than Dallas, if I'm being brutally honest. New York Giants, team needs wide receiver, offensive tackle, interior offensive line, cornerback, safety, tight end, and quarterback. Evan Neal was horrible in 2023, grading out as PFF's 3rd worst tackle in 7 games played. 2 years in, the former 7th overall selection of the 2022 draft has been a colossal bust. The Giants' offensive line was horrible again in 2023, with the league's 2nd worst pass blocking grade. So yet again, offensive line is at the top of the board for the Giants. They did improve slightly during free agency with the signings of Jermaine Illuminor, Aaron Stinney, and John Runyon, but they did nothing to improve their wide receiver room. The only wide receiver free agent move they made was signing Isaiah McKenzie. Therefore, wide receiver is their biggest need by far. On defense, it's cornerback that they need. This is much more of an immediate need than edge rusher. Adoree Jackson's a free agent, and Deonte Banks didn't really deliver as a first-round pick last year. They got some production out of restricted free agent Nick McLeod, and he's going to be back on a one-year deal after they tenured him. But they also signed Jalen Mills from the Patriots. He is really bad. They do not feel confident with him as a starter. Safety Xavier McKinney was also one of the few bright spots on the Giants defense last year, and he's a free agent the Giants were not able to keep around. The tight end position also might need to add more talent, with Darren Waller going to retire. The Giants may have seen this coming, though, given they signed Chris Manhurst, Jack Stoll during the free agency period. Currently, 3rd-year tight end Daniel Bellinger is slated as the team's tight end 1. Washington Commanders team needs quarterback, cornerback, defensive line, interior offensive line, and tight end. Once the Commanders figure out their quarterback with the 2nd overall pick, it's back to the pass rush basics with the Commanders. After trading away both Chase Young and Montez Sweat last season, this team desperately needs to inject more youthful pass rush juice back into the defensive front. Lucky for them, they have a surplus of draft picks to do so with. It should be noted that the Dan Quinn brought over some Cowboys edge rushers, Doris Armstrong, Dante Fowler Jr., to the nation's capital to help with defensive transition. In addition to defensive line, it's cornerback. They made a few veteran signings, but they look more like placeholders than actual starters to be excited for. All in all, the Commanders' defense needs a fresh coat of paint. They've thrown enough on that side of the ball to have a starting unit, but I really think they can go best player available in the draft with the needs solidified. They just need to get more defensive talent at cornerback first and foremost, then at the edge position. I think some of these former Dallas Cowboys can actually be productive with less focus on them off the edge, given how opposing offenses will be more concerned about facing Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen up the gut. Across the offensive line, They need another guard. Nick Allegretti, Ricky Stromberg are just names, far from locks to improve the interior production for a future rookie quarterback. The tackles, though, are in decent shape, especially after they got Cornelius Lucas back in free agency. Tight end is also an area of need, with Zach Ertz on the last legs of his NFL career. New England Patriots team needs quarterback, left tackle, wide receiver. Saving the best division for last with the AFC East, featuring my New England Patriots. Third overall pick is where the NFL draft could get wild. The first two picks are likely going to be back-to-back quarterbacks. But with Elliott Wolf, Gerard Mayo coming in as the new Patriots GM head coaching duo, this deprived roster could go in any direction. Quarterback is the chop pick, given the team needs a new franchise quarterback after trading Mac Jones to the Jaguars. Patriots add Jacoby Brissett as a bridge quarterback for 1 year and $8 million. I don't think it's going to impact their draft plans to select a quarterback in this year's draft. Elsewhere on offense, they desperately need another tackle, specifically at left tackle. Trent Brown was the best pass blocker they had last year, and he signed with the Bengals. The rest of their tackles were a disaster with the strength of their offensive line, primarily the interior, in regards to run blocking. Michael Wenu will be their starting right tackle, but left tackle is still a question mark. They signed offensive tackle Chukwuma Okafora from the Steelers as a potential plug-in. Ergo, they might have done enough during free agency to move away from offensive line, making me more certain they don't draft a tackle over a quarterback at number 3 overall. Wide receiver is also a major hole, given that Demario Douglas was the team's leading receiver a season ago. The Patriots should invest every single asset in the draft into the offensive side of the ball: quarterback, tackle, wide receiver. But it's truly the perfect draft for a team like the Patriots, given how deep the class is at tackle and wide receiver. You go quarterback at 3, exhaust all the remaining tackles and wide receivers with the rest of your draft picks. Rebuild complete. On defense, they look set. All they really need is another perimeter cornerback. It's like the only addition I can really think they need to address. The defensive line was elite last year versus the run, and bringing back some key guys like Anthony Jennings, they look primed to be another run-stuffing unit in 2024. New York Jets team needs offensive line, wide receiver, tight end, and cornerback. 2 words: offensive line. Whoever the top offensive tackle remaining on the NFL draft board will inevitably be the Jets selection at number 10 overall. They missed out on the top tier in last year's class thanks to Bill Belichick. This is even after they added during the free agency period, with a few immediate band-aid fixes as Aaron Rodgers isn't getting any younger. Tyron Smith's next game might be his last, and Morgan Moses is in the last year of his deal. Both tackles are 33 years old. Wide receiver depth is much more plentiful than offensive tackle in this draft. That's perfect for the Jets. There's really not much depth behind Garrett Wilson. Yes, they signed Mike Williams to a 1-year deal worth $15 million, but he's going to be 30 years old. Again, it's another band-aid fix that shouldn't dramatically alter the Jets' draft plans for a wide receiver. And although we should expect to see more from Allen Lazard, with Rodgers under center, the former Packers' disappointing year 1 with Gang Green will surely have the organization looking for more alternative options at pass catcher. Lazard has been rumored to be on the trade block, and the other guys on the roster between Jason Brownlee, Xavier Gibson, Charles Irvin, those guys aren't even number 4 wide receivers on most rosters. Defense is the last thing the Jets have to worry about because there aren't that many needs that they need to address. However, there are a couple of things that I look at when they look at the roster. Both the team's starting safeties are free agents, and they only added Chuck Clark during free agency. Quarterback DJ Reed and quarterback Michael Carter are free agents at the end of the season, so another quarterback investment in the draft market makes sense as they get ahead of some of the losses heading into the 2025 season. Buffalo Bills team needs wide receiver, tackle, defensive line, cornerback, and safety. Top need for Buffalo is easy to identify. It's obviously wide receiver. Look, Joe Brady took over as the offensive coordinator last year in the second half, and his approach with more wide receivers will be at the forefront, with Gabe Davis signing with the Jaguars in free agency. They already cut Deontay Hardy. Veteran Mac Hollins should slide in and kind of take up some of those cardio routes, while Curtis Samuel adds a speed element that the offense has been lacking. On the offensive line, tackle Spencer Brown is entering the final year of his deal, so I know they locked up Deion Dawkins, but I could see them getting away from Brown and needing to replace him with a younger asset, so I like them looking at an offensive tackle prospect. Bills are mostly set on offense outside more wide receivers, but I think on defense, they really need to revamp things if they want to get back into the AFC powerhouse conversation. They need to improve everywhere. Run defense was horrible last year, 4th worst per PFF. Von Miller has been a shell of himself since coming to Buffalo and since his injury. AJ Epinesa is going to return on a 2-year deal, but he has made a little impact with Buffalo. Cornerback Tre'Davious White was released. Kier Elam cannot get on the field despite being a former first-round pick. Safety also might need to be addressed. Micah Hyde's a free agent. Jordan Poyer was cut, replaced by Cam Lewis. And losing linebacker Tyler Dotson to Seattle could be detrimental. He was the Bills' highest-graded defender in PFF in 2022. Also, they should get, however, Matt Milano back for the 2024 season. Miami Dolphins, team needs defensive line, offensive line, wide receiver, quarterback, and safety. Miami could go and play different directions with the 21st overall pick. Needs ranging, like I explained, receiver, O-line, edge. But ultimately, I think offensive line is probably the number 1 need. Robert Hunt is gone. Brandon Shell is gone. Rick Little is gone. They just got decimated on the offensive line. Isaiah Wynn is not the long-term answer at tackle, even though he re-signed with the team. Teron Armstead cannot stay healthy. Liam Eichenberg was horrible again, PFF's third lowest graded center in 2023. Connor Williams is their top guy, but he's still a free agent coming off an injury. So they did bring in Aaron Brewer, Jack Driscoll in free agency. I like those moves, but it's still not enough to really be confident in this offensive line. Wide receiver depth behind Waddle and Tyreek Hill should also be looked at. Waddle's playing in the last year of his rookie deal. Tyreek Hill is yet another year older. All they did was re-sign Braxton Berrios to a one-year deal. Defensively, no team is spending less across the defensive line than the Miami Dolphins. Andrew Van Dinkel's gone. Raekwon Davis is gone. Christian Wilkins is gone. They're all on new teams. And to add legitimate insult to injury, Bradley Chubb tore his ACL in week 17. They had to cut Emmanuel Ogbah against the salary cap. So, again, this team has been decimated on both sides of the ball, both sides of the trenches. So I think they really need to invest in big people in the NFL draft. Their defensive back situation is also kind of precarious. Safeties Sean Elliott and Brandon Jones are both gone. Javon Holland is the last year of his deal. And cornerbacks Keyshawn Crossan and Xavier Howard were both released this season. That's going to wrap up our look at the NFL draft team needs for all 32 franchises post free agency as we enter the NFL draft cycle. If you want more team needs content, check out the full article over at FantasyPros.com, written by yours truly. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. And make sure you ring the notification bell till it goes ding, because we got more fantasy football content and NFL draft content coming your way all off season. Because at Fantasy Pros, there is no off season. And before you go, again, if you want a chance to win a premium 1-year subscription to Fantasy Pros, you need to subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, comment on this video, and that's it. But I'm announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Thanks for watching.